Hi everyone. So if you've seen any picking video that is covering an Assa 700, this probably looks pretty familiar, but this is actually not an Assa 700. This is a Dorma DC500, which is a reasonably competent Assa 700 clone. So you can see the format is the same. It's a Swedish oval, and even the keyway looks pretty similar to what you would expect on an Assa 700. It's got very similar styling in terms of how it looks, but there's some pretty key differences which actually make this lock much easier to pick. So let's look at the pins real quick first. So these locks come pinned exactly like an Assa 700 would, in terms of it's a combination of trees, gin spools, and tapered pins. And the tapered pins are always in the 3rd, 5th, and 7th position within the lock. Now, if you look at these gins or the Christmas trees, they look basically identical to the old Assa ones, which I believe they stopped making. So they basically just copied straight off what those older Assa locks were. And you can see the tapered pins right there. And picking this is very similar to picking an Assa 700 in that you have to lift the tapered pins before the trees and the gins start engaging, and then you have to lift those next. Now, where the key difference comes between this lock and Assa 700 is when you look inside the plug, you can see the milling there, and it looks kind of like Assa gin milling. It's one row or one line within the lock. It's in the first 6 positions, whereas Assa typically only milled the chambers that had gins or trees in them. But where it differs is, I guess, the shape or the depth or something. This milling is not anywhere near as effective. So you can see my pick kind of run over it. But once you've lifted up past it, there's nothing on the underside of the hole to catch a gin. And that's what makes, in my mind, this lock much easier to pick. So if you see the Christmas tree in here, it just slides right out. Now, when you're rotating, this will, get kind of like a spool effect here. But unlike on an Assa 700 where you have to manually counter rotate to lift the gin or the tree out of the hole, on this one, when you push up on these, they act just like a spool. They provide their own counter rotation, and when you lift them up, they click out and you're all done. So once you get past, honestly, the tapered pins, picking the rest of this lock is not too hard at all. So they made some valiant efforts, I think, to copy an Assa 700. I'm not sure why the milling was done the way it is. Maybe it was just cheaper to do that way or something along those lines, but that's really what makes this lock a lesser version of that. Extra pieces I've got here, these little things, these are all drill protection. They were in all these little holes out here and around on the sides. I took them all out. They don't do anything for picking. The holes are in weird places on this. I was used to an Assa 700 when I was getting this. I bricked this lock about 5 times. I think accidentally dropping a gin into one of these drill protection holes. So that was kind of a pain. That's why if you look, the body's a little beat up. I had to do some percussive maintenance on this to free some of the gins after I bricked it. So. But you'll see when we get over to the picking section, not too hard. It only takes me a couple minutes to get this open. But definitely wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about why that was the case. I forgot to show the key pins. So key pins, you can see it's got some actually decent torpedo key pins in here. This has 2 spots that are, you can see it's not quite a 0 lift, but it's a really low lift. And when I was learning to pick this, just sliding my pick under was enough sometimes to overset that. You can see there. and I had 2 of those in this lock, and if you overset it, it was basically it. There was no way to recover from that, so learning this lock, that was the toughest part for me for sure. But once I got past that, again, not too hard. So with that, we'll get over to the next section and get this picked. All right. DC500, Dorma Assa 700 clone. Just like an Assa 700, first thing you need to do is set the tapered pins. This particular bitting has a couple really low lifts in it that I need to avoid. So I'll be doing that as best I can, and then I'll also be probably backing off tension on occasion, just to make sure that if I did overset one of those, that I drop it. Of course, that's not good with tapered pins because you have a tendency to drop those as well. So the 2 really low lift pins in this lock are pin 2 and pin 6, which is unfortunate because I have to pass both of those to get to the tapers in 3 and 7. So there we go. So I think I got the tapers all up there. See about hitting some of these. Okay, that was 1. Skip 2. Let's go to 4. That was 4. And we have an open. Okay, that's not too terribly bad. All right. I'm going to do something a little weird gutting this because I have bricked this lock about 5 times. So you can see that that is open. I can manipulate the cam here. I'm going to relock it. I'm going to flip it around. And I'm going to use the follower, or sorry, the plug as a follower here, which I think will let me get the pins out and also let me show their orientation. So I'm going to lock it. And I'm going to spin the key 180. And I'm going to put it back in my vise like this. But I first need to get this C-clip off here. So my C-clip pliers. Although I put this thing on probably a little too tight last time I did it, so I need to pry it just a tad to get the C-clip pliers in here. Let's do this. Take that out. Get this over here. Okay. A little more open. I hate these C-clips because you have to bend them to get them off. So put that there. Okay, I'm going to use this pinning tray. This is what I've been using for it. It has all the drill protection right there. So just in case you're wondering where all those extra things are. Okay, so now let's do this again. Reverse you. Put you in just like this. Have it facing up at the camera a little better. Get my tweezers here. Okay. So here we go. So your first pin from the drivers is a tapered. Put that right there. One problem doing it this way is the springs are a pain to get out. Okay, so you can already see the next pin poking up here, but it is a tree. It's just a gin. Sorry, not a tree. And that's because that was a low lift. So just like the 700, the high lifts can have trees. The low lifts are just going to be regular gins. So here's a regular tapered pin coming out next. And because of this angle here, I'm going to start being a little careful because I don't want the plug just to slide out by itself. Okay, spring. Okay, next is going to be, this is going to be a tree, I think. So you can see the tree there. Another spring. Just doing this kind of backwards for me. Okay, next is going to be another tapered, which I think you can see there. Another spring. And then this is going to be another gin. You can see the top poking out there already. Oops. Almost dropped that. Spring there. And lastly, this is going to be the last tree. Okay. I'll show the plug in a second here, and you can see all the drill protection holes that have messed me up so many times on this. There's the last spring. Okay, so in here, interestingly enough, it looks like there's something in this first chamber. And you can probably hear it click a little bit in there. I don't know what that is. It might be some kind of milling, but I really don't know what purpose it serves if it is. So that's that. Let's go ahead and get the key pins out. So you're going to see a bunch of torpedoes in here. And let's see the plug. So unlike an Assa 700, this has milling in every chamber but 7. But the milling is, it's not counter milled. It doesn't catch the same way. Let's see, it's on that side too. So it's like, I'm not sure of the thought process here. I'm not a lock manufacturer. But this lock is interesting because they went through all the trouble to machine gins and trees. But then the way this milling is, it doesn't seem like it catches on the way up. It catches on the way down more, I feel like. Or it's just not thick enough. It's like weirdly tapered. So my pick just slides out of it. And so it's not as interactive with the pins as I feel like it should be. See, it's not like on an Assa 700, there would be milling right there, and this would get caught in it. So the milling is deeper in the chamber, and it's not like milled the same way, so it doesn't catch as much. So this lock is, in my mind, significantly easier than an Assa 700. So that's the milling there. Here's all the pins. I mean, you can see they did a great job on these pins. These look just, to me, like Assa gin spools in trees. But the milling really is just not as effective. The tapered pins are just as annoying. And then you can see on these key pins, you know, they definitely have the spooled tops, torpedoes there. So yeah, it's I mean, it's a competent Assa 700 clone, but it's definitely not anywhere near the same level of difficulty in my mind. So there we go. I think that was everything. That is a Dorma DC. Oh, the logo. Dorma DC500.